When Batman Arkham Asylum was first released in 2009, it set a new standard for superhero games, a new high watermark that every superhero game ever since has tried to replicate with varying levels of success. And in 2011, Batman Arkham City, the sequel, came out and introduced a whole new dimension with the open world setting. And you can argue in the comments about whether Asylum or City is your favourite. I've always been more of an Asylum kind of guy. But I think most people would agree that both of these games and the Arkham franchise as a whole represents the best Batman video gaming experience. But in the decades prior to the Arkham series, that race was more tightly contested, let's say. But I would argue, and I am going to argue in this video, that there is one game that stands out and held the crown for 20 years as the best Batman video game. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels. It's officially cold and flu season here in the UK, but I've got my some kind of weird herbal tea, and I'm just desperate to talk to you about Batman, the movie, the video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So maybe just don't get too close to me. Oh God. Now, I've talked about Batman on the NES quite a few times over the years on this channel. To me, I don't know if it feels like this to people watching, but to me it feels like it's very much at the heart of the channel. Going way back, the very first thing I ever published on this channel, although it's not live now, was like a channel trailer, and I used a lot of footage from this game, and I've always used a lot of the music from the game, and I talked about it briefly in my top 20 comic book video games videos from years ago, and more recently in my favourite Batman adaptations, so I've definitely touched on it here and there. And the truth is, I've always wanted to make a dedicated video about this game, but I kind of knew that I would only be able to make that video once. That's not technically true, but that's the way I felt. And the barrier for entry for me is that I wanted to be able to beat this game. I've been playing this game for years now, learning all of its quirks and idiosyncrasies and all the little tips and tricks you need to get through and face the Joker at the end. And just a couple of years ago, I finally beat it for the first time. And since then, I've been able to do it a few more times, and I feel comfortable now. I feel like I know this game and can talk about it. In fact, when I have talked about this game in the past, I've always talked about it as my favourite 5 or 10 minute game, which is where, say my wife's getting ready to go out somewhere, and I've got 5 minutes to just do something quickly. I don't want to start a TV show or read anything. I'll just boot this up on an emulator and play it for 5-10 minutes. And as a result of that, I've played the beginning stages of this game over and over again, and can pretty much beat them with my eyes closed at this point. However, once you get past those early stages, this game becomes notoriously difficult. If you've heard people use the term NES hard before, that's a term that a lot of retro gamers like to use. I think this game qualifies. But before we get into all of that, we need to talk about 1989's Batman the movie, directed by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson of course, and the merchandising juggernaut that it became. We're talking t-shirts, cereal, action figures, I don't know, board games, costumes, mugs, egg cups, anything you can think of that they could slap a bat symbol on. It really took that whole summer by storm. And of course, there were a lot of video games. There were so many video game adaptations, and a lot of them were developed by the same company, Sunsoft, who we're going to talk about. But there were games for the Sega Mega Drive and the Game Boy, as well as home computers and arcade machines. And what's kind of weird is that although there is some shared DNA between all of the games developed by Sunsoft, they're all kind of radically different, and I think they all kind of have their pluses and minuses, and some people will be more fans of certain versions. However, I think for most people, when you imagine the Batman '89 movie game, I think they would think of the NES game. I think that's the most iconic, and I would argue the best of all of those versions. Developed by Sunsoft, Batman was released at the tail end of 1989 in Japan, but it wouldn't come out until 1990 in Europe and North America. The game is a side-scrolling action platformer, often compared to Ninja Gaiden on the NES, for reasons that will become apparent as we get into the gameplay, I think. But before we get into the gameplay, the very first thing that we need to talk about is Purple Batman. Oh my god, so iconic! I think this adorable little purple Batman has kind of transcended the video game and become iconic in its own right. There have been action figures from NECA, there have been Funko Pops, and it's just I don't know, it's kitschy, it's adorable, but there are practical reasons for it as well. For some people at the time, this cutesy little Technicolor Batman was a ding against this game. But when you consider that a lot of the backgrounds of these stages are dark, you know, literally black in some cases, dark browns, it really helps Batman pop off the screen and, you know, adds to the legibility of everything that's happening on screen. So it not only works from a game design standpoint, but it also recalls to me the artist Prince. And Prince is so inextricably tied to the first Batman movie for me. Obviously, he produced the soundtrack album, and for me, that Prince purple colour really runs through Batman '89. Maybe because of the Joker, maybe because of the Prince connection. I don't know, it's not actually used in any of the promotional material, it's all the black and gold, but to me, when I think of Batman, I think black, gold, and purple. Coincidentally, the colours of the Panels to Pixels logo, and actually the original Panels to Pixels logo that I made back in 2017 was with the Prince Purple Rain font in purple and a kind of a 8-bit gold chrome word pixels, and I was very much riffing on my love of Prince, my love of Batman '89, that whole colour palette. Again, this game, Panels to Pixels, it's right there in the DNA. This video is sponsored by Proton VPN, and I remember when I first discovered that every country has like a different Netflix catalogue or a different streaming library on every site. And it was when I went to America and I signed into Netflix in the Airbnb, and there was just all these shows that I didn't have access to in the UK. And I remember thinking then, oh man, I wish there was a way that I could carry on watching this stuff when I got home. And with Proton VPN, you can do just that. It's super easy to set up. It just takes one click and you can set which country Netflix thinks you're in, and then you have access to all these other shows and things. It's super fast, there's no lagging or buffering while I'm streaming movies and TV shows, and it's also secure. It keeps all of my data safe while I'm browsing on the internet. I use it across all of my devices, my phone, my laptop, even my smart TV. And it's also great for when I go overseas, I can keep watching stuff that I've been watching at home as well. So in that way, Proton VPN really is home when you need to feel at home. So thanks so much to Proton VPN for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to Batman. Booting Batman up on the NES and you get a pretty nice opening cutscene. This is about as cinematic as you could hope for at the time. There's some nice 8-bit sprite work of Gotham City and some recreations of the characters from the movie, and it introduces us to our principal players, the Joker, Vicky Vale, and of course, the Batman. Now, according to the text summary in the game's introduction, this game is set during Gotham's bicentennial parade. You know that scene in the movie where the Joker comes out on a parade float and poisons the citizens of Gotham with his toxic Joker gas. But that's really where the tie-ins to the plot of the movie begin and end in this game. It's kind of just a loose framework in which to set that conflict between Batman and the Joker, and loads of other enemies that don't appear in the film. The game is set across 5 stages, and some of them are iconic locations from the film, including Gotham City streets and the Axis chemical factory, and then there is the climatic end scene in the bell tower, the cathedral bell tower. And I have to say, one of the greatest strengths of this game is the atmosphere of these levels, particularly the first stage, Gotham City streets. And I wouldn't say that this is a faithful recreation of Tim Burton and Anton Furst's magnificent Gotham City design from the film, but it kind of has its own vibe going on. It's kind of glittery and more comic booky in a way. In fact, it actually reminds me of David Mazzucchelli's vision of Gotham from Batman Year One. It's a bit more sleazy and a bit more grungy. This might only be applicable to people in the UK, but one of my favourite aesthetic things in the world is when you open a tub of Quality Street chocolates. Well, the way they used to be before they changed the type of packaging, and it was all the different coloured cellophane and it's all glittery. Oh my god, it's so good. And this is what the Gotham City Streets level of this game looks like. It's all glittery and it kind of has a generic future sci-fi vibe going to it, but it is intoxicating in a way that actually Barbara Ling's Gotham in the Schumacher movies that's what I love about that as well. All right, before I turn this into a retread of my Joel Schumacher's Gotham City video, let's talk about the music in this game, because that in itself, again, is so iconic. I overuse that word, but I think it's applicable here. as soon as you turn the game on, you just get washed over by these waves of kind of seasick, square wave, 8-bit sounds, and it's just glorious. Again, the soundtrack to this game doesn't really emulate Tim Burton's soundtrack, but it complements it and it sets its own kind of vibe in the game. I would describe the music in this game as darkly triumphant. I use so much of this music in my videos when I first started the channel, and I just love it. I could listen to this by itself. It's up there for me with, I don't know. I mean, I'm biased towards kind of licensed superhero games because those are the things I've played the most of on the NES, but Ninja Turtles, that's a great soundtrack, and Silver Surfer, way better soundtrack than it is a game. And then you have Batman. Top 3 for me right there. Okay, it's finally time to actually talk about the gameplay, and as I said, it's notoriously difficult, this game. But I think what separates, especially on the NES and those older consoles, what separates a game from being absolutely miserable to play and something that you can actually get stuck into and master is all about the fine-tuning of those basic controls, your jump and attack. And that's what it's all about here. You have games like Castlevania, which I actually love, that's a great game on the NES, but it has that jump that you can't master that jump, you just have to know where you're gonna land. Whereas the jump in this is much more responsive. It's not anything like Super Mario Brothers, which has like the most dynamic, responsive jump ever, but you can move mid-air, you can hold to jump longer, and then of course there is the wall jump, which is kind of one of the defining features of this game. If you've heard people talk before about pixel perfect platforming, well, I think that this game, could be shown as the definition of that. Especially in later stages of the game, you have these wall jumping sections where you really have to master this technique in order to survive, and you're having to jump between really tight gaps, bouncing off one platform to get to another platform, and then you immediately get up there and there's either an enemy or there is a rotating blade in the floor that can just zap your life instantly, and you've got to master this technique. This is obviously where the comparisons to Ninja Gaiden come in with that wall jumping. I'm not super familiar with that game, I've played it a few times on an emulator, but this is a game, Batman, that I've spent a lot of time with, and I feel that I have mastered it, and it's so satisfying once you start to get it. For me, these are my favorite types of games. My favorite game of all time is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and that's a bit different because that's famously easy to pick up, difficult to master. This one is maybe less so easy to pick up, but definitely you get that same satisfaction from mastering the finesse and knowing exactly what you need to do to progress to wherever you're trying to get to. On the attack side, you have Batman's favorite weapons, his fists, and you can use that to punch the POW signs out of enemies' heads. And you also have a few weapons. You have the batarang, the spear gun, and the dirk. And there's kind of a weapons management system here. Actually, this is one of the things I would knock against this game, and I've seen other people mention this, is that it seems like the buttons are switched. I don't know the reason behind this, between the start and the select on the NES controller. So select actually becomes pause, and start you use to cycle through the weapons. And until you get your head around that, and you're not just working on however many years of muscle memory of pressing the start button to pause, when you're in a tight spot and you're trying to change your weapons quickly, that's going to get in your way. The other thing to keep in mind with the weapons is ammo management, because the 3 extra weapons all use ammo and they all use different types of ammo. So it's not a huge concern until the later stages, but you definitely have to do some ammo conservation as you progress to those more difficult stages. Throughout the game, you will fight a bevy of generic enemy types, from shooty guys to flamethrower guys to throwy guys to runny guys to stabby guys, every type of guy that you can think of. And what's interesting is that these are clearly generic enemy types, just kind of video game fodder and designed as such. They don't resemble anybody from the comics, but the game's manual goes out of its way to give them all comic book names that relate to real-life comic book characters. So you have name drops like KG Beast and Maxi Zeus and Deadshot and Firebug. And I think it's generally accepted at this point that the game's developers kind of designed the game with their own enemies, and then whoever was writing the English language manual sat there with a copy of Who's Who in the DC universe and just flicked through and tried to pick the most relevant character names. But then it does result in characters like Deadshot appearing multiple times on screen at once. So, you have to do a little bit of suspension of disbelief there, I guess. Shout out to friend of the channel, Chris Baker, by the way. I first remember reading about all of this stuff in his brilliant book, which it must be like 10 years ago since I first read this book and got in touch with Chris about this. But his book, Wrong, Retro Games You Messed Up Are Comic Book Heroes. In classic video game tradition, there is a boss battle at the end of each stage, and they really become an exercise in learning the enemy patterns and finding blind spots and judicious use of weapons. As I said, this is where you really want to be learning to conserve that ammo. A lot of the time in the boss fights, though, you can rely on the good old-fashioned batarang, and it's got that thing where you can kind of do a muscle spasm on the attack button, and it sends out a flurry of batarangs. It makes such a great sound, and it's really satisfying. You can take out a boss very quickly by doing that. It's so good. It really makes you feel like Batman. As I said, this game is infamous for its difficulty, and it is difficult, but the one thing I would say for it, which I think is much fairer than a lot of other NES games, is that you have infinite continues. And for me, learning to get to know this game, I never had to use save states. I never had to use any kind of rewind feature, because you just restart at the start of the stage that you're on, and there are only 5 stages, so eventually, you just have to get good. However, the one caveat to that, though, again, is ammo management, because it is possible to kind of save lock yourself in a way. If you end up dying multiple times on one stage and just going through those continues, there are certain points in the game where you'll continue at the start of a stage where you need that ammo, and you will restart with no ammo carried forward from the previous stage, if that makes sense. There are some points in the game where you can farm ammo from these little ceiling-mounted robot things that drop little droids that skitter around on the floor. You can just sit there and take those out and just pick up all the ammo. But I think I'm thinking in particular of Stage 3, which for me is where the difficulty just ramps way up. In Stage 3, you're introduced to these leaping enemies, which are referred to in the manual as Jaders. And oh my god, I hate these guys. They basically... it's just a little tricky to get your head around, because they're kind of magnetized to where you'll be stood. They'll jump right on top of you. So you just have to get used to the pattern of kind of baiting them to go where you're stood, and then at the last minute, jump out of the way and hit them with that flurry of batarangs or whatever you've got at your disposal. And it is just a bit tricky to get into that pattern of baiting, dodging, and it happens so fast. When I put it that way, it sounds like so many games. It sounds like the Clayface battle or something from one of the Arkham games, where you're standing in one spot waiting for them to attack and then attacking them. But this is just happening on such a quick cycle that it's really just about learning that rhythm of it. And there's so many times where I've just got out of the rhythm of it, and then I can't find it again. So for me, these are the hardest enemies in the game. It's not any of the bosses. It's not even the platforming for me. It's these Jaders. They just drive me up the wall. And there are so many times where I've had to just get to that stage and go through those continues, lose all my ammo and not be able to take them on. And then I have no choice but to just reset the game and start again from the beginning then. However, as I said, I've played the early stages of this game so many times now, I think I could, maybe not literally, but figuratively play it with my eyes closed. And it's not much work to get back to that stage and get past those guys, and then you're laughing then all the way to the Joker, no problem. So you've made it through all 5 stages, you've beat the bosses, you've made the treacherous climb up the belfry, and now it is time to face the clown prince of crime himself, the Joker. Well, actually, sorry, it's Firebug first, his henchman. But after you've beaten him, you've kicked his ass, now it's time to face the Joker. And the Joker is giving serious Castlevania Dracula vibes here. He's calling down lightning, he's doing all sorts of things that he clearly doesn't do in the movie, but it's fun. This is the hardest boss battle in the game, but what would you expect? It just comes down to absolutely spamming those batarangs and just trying to stay out the way of his lightning, his attacks. You will take so many hits. I don't think there is a way of doing this without taking some damage. Okay, I'm sure there is, but I don't think I will ever be able to achieve that. This is just a, edge of your seat, sweaty palms, lock-in moment. And if after 10 years of trying and attempting to master this game, you, like me, finally beat the Joker, you are rewarded with a little cutscene of a tiny little purple dot that represents the Joker falling from the bell tower and going splat on the floor. Oh, actually, before that, I love the death animation of the Joker staggering back in slow motion. I could probably do a whole, 10-minute dissertation on how that is anime coded and just wonderful. I'll spare you from that. But I do. I love everything about this game. And I hasten to point out that it isn't just nostalgia for me. This game came out 2 years before I was born. I didn't actually play it until I was in my mid-20s. It's only in the last 10 years that I've really, developed a bond with this game. So it isn't just nostalgia, although I have a lot of nostalgia for the Burton Batman franchise in general. However, I think this is a legitimately great action platformer on the NES that stands up on its own merits. It stands up to modern standards even, as much as an NES game can. So there we have it, one of the best licensed games on the NES, one of the best superhero games, and in my opinion, the best Batman game for 20 years. Long live Purple Batman. At the end of every video, I like to leave you with a recommendation of what to check out next. And I think I am going to leave you with my Understanding Joel Schumacher's Gotham City video, because I think it's one of my best videos. It's one of the ones I'm most proud of, and I don't think it got enough love, if I can be completely candid with you. So I'm going to post it up here and click that video on screen now, and I'll see you over there.